out. And then it wasn't for, I think, like another 7 months before we reconnected.
Yeah.
And started hanging out.
Yeah. And honestly, if it weren't for Obi, I don't know if we would have. You were really persistent.
Strong word. That's a very strong word.
But I appreciated it.
Hello, and welcome to yet another episode of the Is It in the Budget podcast. If it's your first time tuning in, my name is Obiahao Kerke. I go by Obi, and I'm the creator of College Money Habits, which is a platform that focuses on teaching students and young adults about the importance of financial literacy. Through this platform, Is It in the Budget, I hope to help encourage people of all ages to develop smart money habits and healthy money habits while sharing experiences from my personal life and that of others and the guests that I bring on the podcast. Today, we are joined yet again by my favorite person, my girlfriend, Sesen.
Hello, everyone.
And today we're going to be talking about developing habits and also overcoming adversity. So in, I think, 2 episodes prior, I spoke with Ephraim on taking control of your own life. And so this is kind of an extension of that discussion. Also, this is not Sesen's first time on the podcast, and that episode was well received. So it only makes sense to have her back. Now, before we get started and jump in, for people who haven't met you or haven't heard from you, do you mind introducing yourself and sharing a little bit about your story?
My story.
Yeah.
Hi, everyone. My name is Sesen, for those who don't know me. I'm from Seattle. I'm a UX designer, and I'm happy to be here.
Awesome. Thank you. And after our last episode, there was some feedback that I made it seem like you chased me in order for our relationship to occur, and you disagreed with that. And so I was hoping that you could share more about your perspective on how we came to be.
I didn't entirely disagree with that, but the feedback I got was interesting. I guess we would have to take it back to 2020. I think it started in the Instagram DMs. We went to high school together, but it started in the Instagram DMs, which then changed.
Who DM'd who first?
I honestly don't remember.
Okay.
Was it me?
Yeah, I think so. I think
it was probably in response to your College Money Habits.
It was either
launch.
that or it was just like happy birthday. It wasn't
something,
a big deal. Yeah, it was an innocent message.
Yeah, something platonic.
Yes. Okay.
Okay. So after a few Instagram exchanges and a few texts later, you and I decided to meet.
Yeah.
It was great, and
that's not what you said this morning.
It was great, but I didn't feel like our personalities meshed.
Right.
I thought you were cool, but I wasn't in the headspace to explore anything romantically. So I was like, okay, I want Obi as a friend. So I made that known.
Yes.
And then we lost. We said we'd keep in touch, but we
didn't.
It was a while.
Yeah.
And then I remember we randomly ran into each other one night in Edmonds.
Yes.
Which was, do you remember that night?
Oh yeah. It brought up a lot of feelings. I think seeing you, because it'd been a while since we had seen one another, and then I remember that you texted me afterwards because I was fighting the urge to text you, and you just kind of said like, oh, it was nice to see you.
I think it was cool to see you in that scenario. For those that want context, it was a random night in downtown Edmonds for a bar crawl, and I think it was around like Thanksgiving. Mm-hmm. And when we connected and saw each other again, I thought it was like low stakes. There was chemistry, and so that night I was like, I
missed out. I'm just kidding.
Not that entirely, but I was like, I want to like get back in touch with him for sure.
Yeah, and on my side, I was like, ooh, should I ask her to hang out? Should I ask her to catch up? And
but did you?
I didn't. Well, because I felt that given the way things left off the first time, that it would just be a bit too forward. And so
fair enough.
I just was like, let me just take a beat and wait it out. And then it wasn't for, I think, like another 7 months before we reconnected.
Yeah.
And started hanging out.
Yeah, and honestly, if it weren't for Obi, I don't know if we would have. You were really persistent.
Strong word. That's a very strong word.
But I appreciated it. That point in my life was really hectic, and so we weren't aligned. I was going through a lot. My parents were going through separation, so things were very hectic. But we met up. We were aligned, and I would say the rest is history.
Yeah, I think it was nice when we reconnected because we were both more mature mentally and emotionally than when we first hung out, and so things were able to. It was better for us to reconnect when we did versus explore things early on. Mm-hmm. But here we are, a year and 4 months later. Mm-hmm. 5 months and a few days. Yeah. Do you think that I chased you? I think I did. A little bit. I think, chase is a strong word. I wanted to make sure that my feelings were known.
I didn't know that.
Okay. Okay. Anyway, moving on. So, when it comes to habits, so we're talking about habits and overcoming adversity. And I overcame adversity with that story. Yes. In the context, so moving on. When it comes to talking about overcoming adversity and also developing habits, I feel like you and I have been talking about habits a lot more in our relationship lately, more so than ever before, because we both have goals that we're pursuing. And what would you say right now in terms of how you've been going about, or what caused you to now have this really large emphasis on developing healthy habits within your life? And again, thinking beyond just eating healthy, but just as you tackle all these different goals, why have habits become more important to you?
Yeah, that's a very good question. As I'm navigating my 20s, I am getting a clear vision of the person that I want to become. And so that person has their life together, is incorporating wellness into their day-to-day, their fitness into their day-to-day. They're a more comfortable, more confident person than I am right now. So I guess every single day I ask myself, what can I do? What steps can I take to become that person?
To become the you that you want?
Yeah, exactly. How do I close that gap?
Yeah. And as you're going through these challenges and as you're developing these habits, one of the questions that I know that we raised that I wanted to explore was, do you ever feel like you're in a game of catch up, like playing a game of catch up that you're just never going to win?
Yeah, I would say that's something that I've dealt with really my entire life, and I'm still figuring out how to get out of that headspace when I find myself feeling like stuck in this, like I've been playing catch up my entire life. But I also feel like it's kind of a victim mindset as well. So in terms of how do I get unstuck when I find myself thinking that way, I remind myself that the only thing that I should focus on is my journey. And if I need motivation, I can look up people that are also on the same path as me and see what they've done, what steps and strategies they've taken in order to accomplish their goals. And so that helps me and that motivates me. That is something that I am very familiar with, feeling like I'm constantly chasing after something and feeling behind at the same time.
Yeah. Is there an example that you can think of right now with something that you're going through where that applies, that feeling of feeling behind?
Yeah.
Whether it's,
I would say, so I'm a UX designer, and I'm also enrolled in a boot camp. So I started that journey September 2022. And sometimes along my journey, I'll think, oh, dang, I wish I had done this at the beginning of the pandemic, or I wish I had explored this route when I was in college, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah. But it's that's also just me coming up with excuses. What matters the most is that I've decided to take that path and take the leap now and just focus on the steps that I need to take to get me closer to my goal, instead of wasting my energy thinking about, I could have started this journey earlier on.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. And beyond boot camp, so you're doing boot camp, you're also in the job market looking for a job, and then you've also been working on exercising more frequently, which I'd say you're doing an excellent job of. We're both challenging one another to live healthier lifestyles. What do you think has been the present day, the hardest thing to overcome? Because I know that when it comes to developing habits and also overcoming adversity, there's lots of feelings of, or there's oftentimes feelings of self-doubt, and it's also easy to, when you run into those moments where you feel stuck, to stay in that moment and not move forward and feel shoot, I'm stuck now. This is not the first time I felt this way. When am I going to get there? When am I going to get to the finish line? And so right now, is there anything in particular that like you're still working through that has influenced you to start developing habits, or what are the challenges that you faced most recently?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I would say I have experienced a lot of challenges on my UX journey, some of them being feeling a little isolated on that journey. What else? Feeling isolated, taking too long to ask for feedback on my work, and constantly questioning if what the return on my investment of like spending thousands of dollars on my boot camp will be, and will it be worth it? Will I find a job at the end of it? I would say are some recurring challenges. And in terms of what have I done to overcome these challenges would be, in terms of the feeling of isolation, I would say I attribute that to my bootcamp being fully remote. And even though thousands of people across the globe are like enrolled as well, it's remote. So you really have to like put yourself out there if you want to connect with other designers. You have to be okay with like putting yourself, I'm learning, like on the spotlight and asking for feedback, because that's the quickest way you can grow. Sometimes it takes a different set of eyes looking at your work and really like dissecting elements of your work where you need growth to improve. And then in terms of like dealing with the thoughts of self-doubt coming when I'm like, oh, like will this investment be worth it? And will I find a job at the end of it, especially with the job market being really tough? Some ways that I've overcome that is by, on Discord, I'm sure people are familiar with Discord, there's a channel for my design community where people post jobs that they've obtained, and then they'll also include their portfolio, how long it took them to get the job, and their takeaways. And so just scrolling through that alone motivates me, because people post about their successes. How do I want to say that? I'm like struggling.
What are you trying to get at?
When I am feeling a little bit of self-doubt on whether or not I'll be able to like obtain a job at the end of my bootcamp, I'll look for sources of motivation, that being like looking through the job posting, and then also looking at creators, designers that are like putting themselves out there on social media, like talking about their process, talking about like the things that they also struggled with, because I'm also struggling with those things, and seeing that they're able to, at the end of the day, get that job, whether that's in big tech or startup, gives me motivation that I'll be able to also see it through.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I mean, with the feeling of self-doubt, do you feel like that also relates to, I guess, a fear of failure, like a fear of not getting a job? 'Cause I know that that's what, like, personally, when I've struggled with self-doubt, that it like constantly it overlaps with like, what if I don't succeed at this, given all the work that I've put in?
Yeah, absolutely. But when those feelings arise, I just remind myself, like, ultimately it's something that I need to see through.
So one thing that you mentioned earlier was a feeling of isolation, which I think is common, and I hope that you know that you have a community to help. But I can relate to that definitely, especially when it comes to like all of the various things that I'm working on with like my brand, and then when it comes to like content creation, like feeling like I'm like there's so much going on, and I can't like sometimes feeling like I can't ask anybody to help me with things, even though I know that there's people that would be willing, but just not really wanting to do that. And I know that one thing that you've done recently, because I remember you talked about wanting to post on TikTok more and attempt to build out a community in that space within UX, and then also targeting different communities to just kind of like share your experience and share your journey. And I would say that you have done such an amazing job at being consistent in that space and posting, because you set a goal of posting, I think it was every day for a month.
Yeah.
And watching you post and then watching your account grow, I was like, geez, like this is like making me feel like I need to start posting more, because it was something that I was slacking on. And so what helped you, one, get started with being consistent in that area, which was really like kind of a new thing that you were doing, and then also like overcoming, I guess, really like that fear of failure, like your content not doing well and potentially like negative comments? What kept you going?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I would say in order to not feel isolated anymore, I was like, okay, I need to practice reaching out to people in my own design community on Discord.
Right.
And then also expanding and finding a community outside of Discord. So I thought TikTok, I wanted to overcome the fear of rejection. So I was able to do that through reaching out to people on Discord and creating videos on UX. And so my goal with that was to meet other designers, potentially answer any questions that someone who might be interested in UX might have. And then also having a portfolio outside of my existing portfolio,
Right,
like a portfolio on social media to showcase how far I've gone and how far I've grown as a designer, as a creator. And then also speaking in front of a camera, public speaking in general is not my strong suit. So it's another way for me to practice growing in that aspect.
Yeah, I like that. And again, yeah, and it was really just amazing to watch because I remember I'd like repost your content, of course, and just seeing like every day that I would open the app, it's like, there's a new post. I know one thing that I've talked about before on this episode is life rewards consistency. I talked about it in an episode with Ephraim, and I think that you are an example of that, especially within that space.
So are you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm not going to say like, I haven't, all my videos haven't performed well. As anybody who's starting out on TikTok or social media knows, like it takes a while.
Yeah.
And I learned that pretty quickly. And I'm not going to lie, I have deleted several videos that got like below 200 views or like something whack, like 11 likes. But yeah.
I've deleted much content as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, it can be very discouraging when you put in the effort, and this is beyond just social media, but if you put in the effort, let's say you study for an exam and then you don't do as well as you hope, that can be very discouraging. If you're trying to lose weight and you've been exercising and you've been dieting in a way that you feel has been effective, but it hasn't been, that can be very discouraging the same way that when posting content that you put a lot of effort into, like thinking about the concept and then filming it and then editing it and then posting it and getting excited like this one's going to do well, this one's going to hit, and then it doesn't get the reception that you hope for, and maybe it even gets like really no reception, and then the act of like having to delete something that you worked hard on is like mentally and emotionally, it's not a great feeling.
Yeah. So can I ask you, like, how do you overcome that when you feel that way?
Yeah, so I've had my platform now it's going on 4 years this May, actually. And social media has easily been the hardest part about managing everything, with trying to be consistent, trying to change as the algorithm changes, and also dealing with like just that, like spending a lot of time, because we've had this conversation many times where I'll be excited to post something and it doesn't do well, and I'm like, oh, great, like I'm not going to post again for a while because of this. And I suppose the encouragement is the people who do engage with those posts, because a lot of the people who engage with my content are regular people who engage with my content, and then also people like yourself who share my posts, Ephraim behind the camera who shares my content, and then I have siblings as well and other friends and other people who share my content. That means the world to me. And when people comment and say like, oh, like good job, or like I needed this, or things like that, that's encouragement, because I know that it's impacting somebody. That helps me keep going. Also, I feel that because you mentioned rejection, and I've dealt with a lot of rejection in my life, even the first time we dated.
Look at you. Look at you now.
And overcoming that, the way that I overcome that now is knowing if I let myself get overwhelmed with rejection and I don't keep pushing, my life is just going to be a series of failures. I think I've talked about it here. I know that I've posted before on it. For every like deal that I do get, there was probably 3 that I didn't get. But the deal that I did get like helps me keep moving forward, because I have seen the result of continuous effort, and that is ultimately success. Mm-hmm. Where it's inevitable that you're going to fail at something. Mm-hmm. And it might happen more than once. Through the almost 4 years now that I've had my platform, I've been graced with so much opportunity, where everything that I've been concerned about, maybe it's happened, but I've still seen success from it. Like I was scared that my podcast, the first season, I thought like, okay, it's not going to get views. And some of the posts didn't do as well as I'd hoped, but I got sponsored my very first time with my podcast. So that was great. That was awesome. And many of the posts did do well, including the one that the one that we did, which is my most listened to episode. So yeah, I mean, it's really, a lot of it is self-encouragement, but also like having you, because with sometimes you just need somebody to say like, just post it, or like just do it. And that helps a lot, where I'll share a post with you that I'm thinking about posting. You'll say, just post it. Or like, when are you going to post it? Then that's like all I need, because sometimes it's not enough for me to just be like, I should post this. But then having you say like, just do it. Kind of like the Nike logo. But just having someone to help push you, because sometimes being your own accountability partner and your own like biggest fan doesn't always work.
Yeah.
So having that.
The importance of community, for sure. I will say, like, the encouragement that I've gotten from you has been unmatched, and I greatly, deeply appreciate it.
Of course. We're in this together. So a moment ago off camera, I made a statement that you need to be your own biggest fan. And Ephraim had said, do you? And I think that was an interesting question, because I've always felt that you need to be your own biggest fan in life. Otherwise, you're ultimately not going to achieve the things that you want to, because yes, you can have somebody in your corner who is supporting you and pushing you, but if you don't want those things for yourself, and if you're not putting in the effort for those things, they're likely not going to happen. But to Ephraim's point, I do not think that is exclusive. I don't think that is that's what everybody's going to experience. So what do you think? Do you think that everybody needs to be their own biggest fan?
I think that would be optimal. I think that if you are your own biggest fan, it'll yield for high results, like good results, positive results. Yeah, I think it's something that people should, myself included, should work towards. I am a big advocate for self-trust. Just going off on what you said about being your own biggest fan, I think in order to be your own biggest fan, you need to have self-trust and belief that you have it in you to see it through and accomplish your goals. And so the way that I found helpful to do that is by keeping promises to yourself, whether that's making your bed in the morning, or if you said that you're going for a run in the morning, following through with that. Yeah. And the more you see things through, the more you're reinforcing the idea of you have yourself to depend on, and that gives you an evidence portfolio to reflect on when you stumble across something challenging and you're having self-doubts. You can tell yourself, wait, I've done challenging things in the past before, so yeah, I can definitely see this through.
Yeah, I think creating like your own track record of success in that way of I know that I can do this because I've done this other thing before. I think is really important. And I think self-trust and self-confidence go hand in hand with helping give you the confidence to tackle something. Where I know right now, one thing that I'm struggling with is, and I mentioned this in the episode with Ephraim, is passing an exam for work. And I tried once and I failed that exam. And so now I'm getting ready to take it again. And we've talked about like a fear of failure. And one thing that I've been struggling with is studying consistently. And I think one thing that's prevented me is that I don't trust myself to pass the exam, even if I study consistently, where I feel that no matter what I do, there's a high percentage, a high chance that I might fail it. And that prevents me from like putting the work in, because it's like, I'm better off not trying than trying and failing. But I don't think that's true. And I think that there are many examples, and it's really hard, because I think there's many examples from my personal life where I've put the work in and I've succeeded. And so I don't know why this is so hard for me, but I don't think that I'm alone in experiencing that feeling and experiencing that challenge, whether it is an exam or whether it's obtaining a job or losing weight or whatever. And so, are there examples from your personal life that you can think of where you haven't overcome something yet and you're maybe working on it, or maybe you're not because it's been so challenging? Yeah.
Something that I've been struggling with as of late is, as I'm wrapping up my boot camp and completing my portfolio, I'm also like in tandem looking to network and connect with other designers, just so that the job hunting process is a little bit more seamless for me. Right. However, unfortunately, I keep pushing deadlines.
You're basically tackling like I feel like 10 individual goals within these two larger goals of completing your boot camp and completing boot camp and then obtaining a job. And I know that has to be difficult. So like, what do you think has been the most challenging?
I think the most challenging aspect of that is battling with the feelings of self-doubt, making sure that everything looks good on my portfolio, and knowing when to stop iterating, because at some point you need to be okay with your work, with where it's at. Trust that you know the knowledge. And so I guess transitioning from theorizing to actual implementation, like executing. And by that I mean, instead of waiting for your portfolio to be in perfect shape, trusting that you have what it takes within you to go over your portfolio, to talk about what you know as a designer, and to put yourself out there. And
is there anything you feel like you know, like you need to do that you haven't done yet, that you've really like been struggling to overcome? Because I think a lot of people who are listening to this are probably at a place where they know exactly what they want to accomplish, and they potentially know exactly what they need to do. However, they haven't done it yet, and something's holding them back, whether it's themselves or whether it's an external factor. Do you have an example of something like present day that you're trying to get done that you haven't yet, or that you're really struggling with?
Yeah, absolutely. Right now I'm at the final stretch of submitting my portfolio while also reaching out to other designers on LinkedIn. And so I have a lot of small goals and big goals at the same time. And so something that I struggle with is switching gears and making sure that I'm able to work on my portfolio for a little bit, and then also make time for setting up informational interviews with other designers. Something that I'm working on is just being flexible and being able to seamlessly switch gears. And unfortunately, I'm like, if I'm working on something, I'm like very consumed with that one thing. And I think that holds me back from making progress.
No, that makes a ton of sense. And I mean, what I would say is, because I've seen your work, you are an amazing designer. And I think reminding yourself of that every day, I know that I joke around about like self-affirmations all the time, but I think that, because it's not even that I think that, I know that you are amazing at the work that you do. And I don't think that I'm the only one who feels that way. I know, in fact, that I'm not the only one that feels that way, because I've shown your work to people that I work with and they all feel the same way. And I know that I've been through like the same way that I feel like I oftentimes need that, like that push with social media, where I don't know if it's good, and then somebody else tells me it's good, and that's all I need. I think being like, that's a good example of like being your biggest fan, where that might be helpful, because you're smart. You're creative.
Affirmations.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, beyond that, I can go into what makes you an amazing person, and we could spend days talking about that. I know, and I feel that you know, ultimately at the end of the day, that you are going to be successful. And one thing that we've talked about is making sure that each day that you are putting in the work. And so asking yourself at the end of every day, what have I done? What have I done towards my goals? What have I done to put myself in a different position than I was at the start of today? If I wanted to lose weight, did I exercise today? Did I hop on the elliptical? Did I eat healthy? If I'm trying to obtain a new job, did I look for jobs? Did I work on my resume? If I'm trying to build a better connection with friends and family, did I reach out to anybody today? And just making sure that every day, like, something's happening that's putting you forward towards those goals, because we've talked about like that feeling of being stuck. If you get stuck and then you get into a habit of making excuses, that becomes like something that you resort to, and it becomes very familiar, and I think that's how people get into a victim mindset. Stop making excuses.
You said it.
Don't make me. Yeah.
He's been wanting to say that for the entirety of our episode.
Well, because I think the stop making excuses hits hard for me, and it hits close to home. Just experiencing, like, because I get really frustrated when listening to people assert that they're not where they want to be, and then when you ask, oh, like, what are you doing about it? Nothing. And then months later or a year later, I'm still not where I want to be. Oh, what have you done? Nothing. Okay. Nothing
changes if nothing changes.
Exactly. And so I don't feel sorry for you.
Controversial.
I don't know how it could be, because if, let's say that, like, because same way, like, if you tried to help me with something, like if I was like, Sesen, I'm really struggling with X, Y, and Z, and you help me every day and you give me encouragement, and I still don't change, after a year or two, you're gonna be like, well,
Yeah.
That's kind of on you. And
I think ultimately, the person that wants to develop better habits and to change needs to find that willingness within themselves.
Right.
Like, I don't think it can be external. I mean, you can find external glimpses of motivation, like someone who has the job that you want or has achieved the fitness goals that you want. But really, you need to find that within yourself.
Yeah.
And I think that each time you don't follow through with a task that you want to accomplish, you are increasing that gap between you and self-trust, and you're building distrust. And so we want to break that. I want to break that.
Yeah. And it reminds me of my exam of that mistrust. And I mean, because I just talked about like making excuses. I've been making an excuse of, like, I'm probably not going to pass this, so why bother studying? And as a result, I've ended up being in the same place, which is I haven't passed the exam. And so that's been very frustrating for me, and working towards overcoming that. I know that one thing that we've both been working, and I'd argue successfully at, is exercising more, because we both felt, okay, like, because we eat out. We enjoy eating out. And I know that I gained a lot of weight from when we started dating to, you're nodding.
Well, I'm not nodding. I'm not nodding at that. I'm reflecting on, how when people say like, oh, that relationship weight really creeps up on you. Like, before you and I got into a relationship, I was like, oh, that's not going to happen. And then it did. Not like me.
Yeah, no, I was just messing with you. And it was crazy because it doesn't happen overnight. But then I remember I recorded a video and I sent it to you, and I was like, I kind of feel like I look a bit different. and then I realized it was kind of at that point that I had gained, there's a lot of weight from when we had started seeing one another. It was between 20 and 30 pounds. That was pretty much all I needed to start to say, okay, like, I need to start getting more consistent with exercise. And since then, we've been challenging one another. We're like daily. We're like, oh, are you going to work out today? Or like, did you do this? And then we've been asking each other, like, what are you eating? And I'm always saying like, protein. And then you're helping me eat more like veggies. And we've explored like cooking different things. Oftentimes when we hang out together now, we're cooking together as opposed to going out. And I think like we've worked towards building a very healthy habit within our lives with like eating healthier and exercising. But it took time, and it wasn't without fail, because I know there's been many periods where I've started to exercise and then I stopped, and then that weight started to creep back in, and I was like, the only way to lose it is if I have to start exercising again, and I have to continue eating healthy. And so what are some of the habits that you feel of late have been things that you've been working at successfully despite having some challenges?
Good question. 2 habits come to mind. So waking up early and then exercising consistently.
Yeah, you wake up so early. Jeez. You wake up extremely early.
Like 7 a.m. on a good day? Yeah, I don't think that's too early. I set a goal to like wake up at 5 a.m. And I'm not a morning person, but I'm slowly becoming a morning person because I'm realizing that I'll have more time throughout the day if I wake up early, if I start my days early. Yeah. Part of the reason why I did was because things like exercise takes like 2 hours out of my day. And so if I'm able to do that like between 6 and 8, then I have like 9 to 3 to like work on my UX stuff. And I'm able to like end the day quicker as opposed to like working out like at 9 a.m., 10 a.m. and like starting late. So working out and then waking up early have been some of my goals that I've been working on. Challenging, because I want to hit the snooze button, and I have hit the snooze button. I don't think that's a unique experience, but it's rewarding.
So a question that Ephraim raised is like, how do we deal with when we are on the right track, when we are doing these things, when we are practicing healthy habits, and then we do slip up? How do we deal with that? So using the examples that you just described, when you don't wake up early, when you do hit that snooze button, or when you take a couple of days off from exercise, or when you start eating Arby's. I know you don't like Arby's. when you stop eating healthy, and then you start to eat out again. Yeah. Like when those mistakes happen, how do you get back on track, and how do you not tell yourself, shame on you for doing this? How do you not get down on yourself, and you say, okay, like, all right, that was just the day, or that was just 2 days. Let's get back on track. How do you get to that place?
I mean, I think it's I think it's pretty common to criticize or like, I guess, talk negatively upon yourself when you do slip up.
Oh, yeah.
But it's not productive.
Not at all.
So I would say give yourself some grace, understand why you slipped up, and then go back to why you developed these habits in the first place and attach meaning to it. Understand your why. And that alone that helps me kind of like regroup.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, going back to the why, like why am I doing this? What is the end goal? And writing it down so that it's visible, and again, having an accountability partner are all important things. Before we close out, one thing that I did want to mention is that when it comes to these habits and these healthy habits, one thing that really helped me with exercise was financial habits, because I recognize that, okay, if I can save consistently and then after a year I have like this amount of money, or I can invest consistently and then I've seen rewards from it, or I can pursue a job and then obtain it. All of those lessons showed me like consistency works beyond like you have effort and you have consistency, it works. And so I knew that when it was time to change how I was living when it came to exercise, I knew, yes, this is going to be hard, but if I could do this other thing, like I can do this. I know that we've talked about kind of like building that track record of success.
Evidence portfolio.
Exactly. And it really helped me with tackling that, because it helped me like know, even though I'm not seeing progress right away, or I'm not seeing progress over a month, I know that eventually I'm going to see progress. And I think that for anybody who's trying to tackle a goal who hasn't seen progress yet, if you remain consistent, like you're going to see it eventually. It's going to happen, because there's no way it doesn't. If you remain consistent, it might take you longer than it's taken somebody else. Could be a week, could be a month, could be a year, could be years. But it's consistency at the end of the day that's going to matter.
Yeah, I agree completely. And it's completely the opposite for me. I'm able to trust the process with my UX journey, because I know that I have discipline and I have evidence of me being consistent through exercise. And so I implement aspects of that to my UX journey, and that helps me stay the course.
Does that also help when you're feeling stuck, and then also when you make mistakes, if those occur, like reminding yourself of,
Absolutely.
Like if I've done this, like I can do this.
Absolutely. Absolutely. If I've done something challenging in the past, I can absolutely do this.
Yay.
It helps me.
That's awesome. And so hopefully, if you've been following along to this episode, I do hope that you feel encouraged as far as in ways that you can overcome adversity. Also recognizing that if you're feeling that way, or if you're feeling stuck, like you're not alone. Everybody experiences at some point, regardless of the resources that you have. Nobody is successful in everything they do right away. So we've talked about some of the challenges that we face, some of the challenges we've continued to face. And I do think that it's important to always like set specific goals. And if you have an accountability partner, have one. I've been extremely grateful and gracious to have you in my life to help me with literally everything that I've tried to tackle, and I love that about you, with how like I never really like asked for help or encouragement. You just provide it, and so that's been like, I can't thank you enough for that. Oh. And so before we close out, final word goes to you on just like final bit of advice that you would give to anybody who's working towards a goal that maybe they haven't achieved yet. Maybe it's been years and they're having that feeling of feeling stuck. What would you tell them, or what would you tell younger Sesen if you were to see 10-year-old you who was feeling stuck or overwhelmed in some way?
That's a good question.
You can even think of you 5 years from now. What do you imagine you'd be telling yourself right now? Because 5 years from now, as you are that UX designer, that senior UX designer, maybe you're running your own company and traveling the world, giving speeches to people about how to get into careers in UX. What do you think you would be telling yourself right now? Because like if you think about it, if you think younger you would be proud of where you are right now, just imagine how proud of yourself you're going to be in 5 years.
That is a very good question. I had to think about it and write some notes down. But I would say on the other side of hard work and uncertainty, there's stability, there's new opportunities to evolve, and ways to increase optionality for you. So stay the course. It's better to take the leap and to see how expansive life can be than to wonder what kind of life I could have lived.
Right.
So that's something that I'll have to remind myself every day until I reach my goal.
Yeah, and I mean, I resonate with that. And I think it's one thing that we've talked about quite a bit in our relationship, as far as like you mentioned, taking the leap, especially in those moments of discomfort or when you're having self-doubt is you're never going to find out what's going to happen if you don't try.
Exactly. What was that one quote that you like?
Oh, A Most Violent Year, Oscar Isaac. Whenever, I think it's like along the lines of, when I'm most scared to jump, that is exactly when I jump. Otherwise, you end up staying in the exact same spot your entire life. And, like, and that I can't do. Well, awesome. Well, thanks again for joining me for the second time.
Of course.
And for, again, being that strong sense of encouragement in my life and that strong sense of support.
Of course.
I love you.
I love you too.
And I appreciate you also just hopping on this podcast and being open to share some of your experiences, positive and some of the challenges as well. I do hope that for those of you listening that you enjoyed this episode. Please check out the other episode with Sesen and I, where we talk about the importance of talking about money in relationships. To hear more, feel free to check out Is It in the Budget on Instagram and on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. You can also check out College Money Habits on Instagram if you're looking for financial tips. And never forget that as you face life and as you face different things and as you're making financial decisions, no matter what it is, if you are purchasing a car, purchasing a home, or if you're trying to set up a new budget, or if you're looking to start investing, don't forget to ask yourself, is it in the budget?
Bam.
Thank you.